Chapter 1456. I don't have tears. His blood poured down in red drops from the sky. At that moment, Su Ming no longer had any arms, so he had used his mouth to yank off the talisman. That action was fueled by his determination, his promise, and an impulse that seldom appeared over the years. The last time he had this sort of impulse was when he was young and still in Dark Mountain tribe. At that moment, he had been bound by his elder in the house and was not allowed to join the battle for Dark Mountain. Back then, Su Ming had also descended into madness while his eyes filled with red. So many years later, the same thing had happened to him again. It was something that should not have happened, because many years had passed since then and Su Ming was no longer the child in the past. His intelligence was enough to help him suppress all such impulses. However, humans could not gain complete understanding of every single thing. There were times when they simply had to act according to their hearts. If Su Ming had calmly accessed the battle of the tree of Dao verification tearing at the sky, he would not have gone all out for Hao Hao. After all, every single person had their own selfish desires, even if someone had once helped them. The price Su Ming had to pay was too great even if the boy had helped him. Besides, Su Ming had to face a life-threatening risk, and someone who was determined to resurrect all the familiar faces in their life, perhaps, should not have done something like that. Tearing the talisman from the scar was very dangerous. If Su Ming died, then all of his previous actions would have been in vain. From a logical standpoint, no matter how one looked at it, what Su Ming had done right then was incredibly unwise. However, there were times when rationality was not everything, calmness could not decide what's right, and what a person needed to do was to ask themselves whether they would come out of a situation without feeling any regret. They should not feel regret for their choices. It was easy to say that, but how many people were able to put it into practice? When Su Ming asked his heart, it had told him to act according to how he felt. No matter how dangerous it was, he had to repay those who showed kindness to him, and Hao Hao's words of wanting to go home also touched him deeply. If you help me, then I will help you, or rather, I will help you, so please help me were very simple words, but all forms of logic had been screaming at Su Ming that it was difficult for him to repay that kindness. The price for it was simply too huge, but Su Ming still chose to do it. At that moment, he did not think about whether his actions were right or wrong, and neither did he think about what he would lose in the process. From the depths of his heart, he simply wanted to help the boy. He wanted to help him go home. The air roared right then. As Su Ming's body fell and the talisman was ripped off the scar, the stitches over the scar were instantly torn, and a gap was revealed. The next moment, the dimension of the third layer began to crumble with a bang. The shattering air brought with it a destructive power that could bury all forms of life. When it swept out in every direction, Su Ming's body plunged downwards, but a figure appeared in a flash beside him. It was Hao Hao. Even though he could see his road back home, he did not immediately step into it. Instead, he appeared beside Su Ming and hugged him. You helped me, so I'll help you. When the youthful voice reached his ears, a smile blossomed on Su Ming's lips. Hao Hao took hold of his body and flew to the gap in the sky. Let's go home. When Hao Hao said those words softly, his desire to return home shone in his eyes. Let's, Su Ming mumbled and closed his eyes. His limp body was held tightly by Hao Hao, who turned into a long arc that charged into the gap in the sky like a shooting star. Right after, the dimension of the third layer shattered to pieces. The destructive power started rampaging through the place, and Lin Dong Dong, the second prince, and the headless figure were all forced to turn into long arcs that charged to the gap in the sky. Their only chance of survival was in that place. If they stayed, then even with Lin Dong Dong's power, they could only be buried along with the third layer. They instantly rushed into the gap. The moment they disappeared, an astonishing rumble shot up in the third layer. While it echoed in the air, the third layer shattered completely, and from then on, disappeared from space. When the third layer was destroyed, it vanished from sight as if someone had slowly shut their eyes to block it from their view. Once they completely closed their eyes, their world would turn black. Everything in the world would be gone as if it was no longer around. Su Ming did not know how much time had passed, but a ray of sunlight fell on his eyelids and seeped into his eyes, causing him to think that the world was no longer black, but had turned pink. Then, Su Ming slowly opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was a blue sky and a gentle light from the sun that was not piercing to the eyes. The sunlight landed on him, and then, Hao Hao's voice reached his ears. "You're awake." There was joy in the boy's voice. When Su Ming slowly sat up, he saw Hao Hao sitting by his side. The 5-year-old boy was smiling happily at that moment. The smile on his face was very pure, and delight radiated from his face. It could be seen that he thought everything was good right then. When compared to the ruins around them, his happiness and joy seemed to be even more precious. The land around them was pure wasteland and covered in a layer of dust. It seemed to have been buried in the passages of time for an unknown number of years. Su Ming could vaguely see mountains and rivers that had once existed in that land and faintly hear the delighted laughter that once rang in the area. However, in the next breath, be it the vague sights or the faint sounds, all of them shattered into nothingness. What he saw right then seemed to only be remnants of a blazing flame. Aura of death filled the area. It might not have been brought by death, however. Because it had been too long since any living soul had appeared in the place, gradually, an air of familiarity filled the world. It became quiet, and the aura of death was born. This is. Su Ming averted his gaze from the area. In his eyes were the reflection of all the wasteland after he swept his gaze across the world, bearing witness to the glory it had once enjoyed. This is my home, but it has already changed. I can't quite find the atmosphere it once had, but I remember the sunlight here. I remember the night sky, and I can also remember its presence. Hao Hao fell silent for a moment, as if he had become rather depressed, but soon, he lifted his head, and the faint but happy smile returned to his lips. He seemed to want to bury all the unhappiness he felt deep in his heart. He was clearly telling himself that he had to be happy, he had to be satisfied, because that was his home. When Su Ming saw Hao Hao's smile, he felt like he was seeing tears. In silence, he noticed that the arms he lost were back on his body. This sight caused him to sink into his thoughts. When he looked at Hao Hao again, he found that his body had become a little blurrier than when Su Ming had fallen unconscious. "You." Su Ming sighed softly. He lifted his right hand and patted Hao Hao's head. The boy looked at him happily with a very deep-seated dependence in his eyes. "You helped me, so I'll help you." The boy's smile became even more innocent. When he looked at Su Ming, the dependent look in his eyes became even stronger. He was a child who was afraid of loneliness. Su Ming was his only support, and he did not want to lose him. If that happened, he would return to the loneliness he once suffered. That loneliness was something he was afraid of. Su Ming was silent. After a long while, he nodded, and when he sat down to meditate, he slowly closed his eyes. Su Ming might not have sensed too much unfamiliarity in the air, but power was everything. The moment he circulated his cultivation base, he noticed that some of the power Hao Hao had sent surging into his body had already fused with him. Even if it was not much, the 7th overlapping shadow had appeared among his 6 Dao paragons in his third eye, and the cultivation base in Su Ming's body was so vast that he had a strong feeling that if he could completely refine it, he would be able to gather together his 8th overlapping Dao paragon and become a great Dao paragon. Time trickled by, and when dusk arrived, the world gradually grew dark. When stars shone in the night sky, Su Ming opened his eyes. He saw Hao Hao by his side, staring at the sky. There was a dazed look on his face, and Su Ming seemed to be able to see the tears at the corners of his eyes, despite the kid's dazed expression. But when he looked at the boy closely, he found no sign of tears. Days passed like that. Half a month later, Su Ming brought Hao Hao to walk past the wasteland, the world filled with the aura of death. They walked without a word, quietly they went past abandoned cities that had no signs of life. Even the first and the second princes had scattered after they entered. It was hard to tell where they were. Hao Hao stopped at the edge of a pit that resembled a sinkhole and stared at it. After a long while, he said softly, "There was once a lake here." Hao Hao closed his eyes, and nostalgia surfaced in his voice. "I still remember this place." Su Ming stood next to him. He watched the sinkhole that was once a lake, the dust and cracks in it. He accompanied Hao Hao and remembered the past with him. A few days later, when they left, the sinkhole still remained in place. They walked past the wasteland, past the lands that were once mountains and rivers, and past beaches whose seas had already been reduced to deserts. The end of both the sea and desert could not be seen, but while one of them resembled life, the other resembled silence. One of them was the line connecting the sky and earth, and the other was the edge of sand. They were stretched far and wide as before, but the landscape had already changed drastically. How lowered his head. He crouched down and grabbed a handful of sand. As he stared at it, his voice echoed in the air. 9 continents, 9 butterfly spirits. They once surrounded me, but now, none of them are here. Su Ming sighed softly. He could understand the anguish the boy felt at that moment. He patted the boy's head gently with his right hand, and continued doing so until Hao stood up. He hugged Su Ming while crying. I am the spirit of the tree of Tao verification. I don't have tears, but I want to cry. After coming back, my heart only hurts. After a long while, the boy lifted his head and looked at Su Ming. As he listened to that youthful voice, Su Ming's heart was touched again. He looked at the boy, then crouched down and picked him up into his arms. Everything will be all right, Su Ming said while holding him, and walked into the distance. His voice echoed in the air and lingered for a long time, refusing to disappear, as if it was a beautiful promise. Bring me to the center surrounded by the 9 continents, please. That place is where I was born, the young boy pleaded softly while burying his head into Su Ming's shoulder. Chapter 1457. For what reason? They walked past mountains and rivers, wastelands, and saw dust as well as more of a desert. It was as if the prosperity of one breath had withered away in the next breath. Just whose face would remain young? Whose sigh would stay forever? Whose past was not be beautiful? Su Ming sat down in the wreckage and watched the sun set. They were beside a mountain and river, watching the evening arrive. The echo of laughter seemed to come through the passage of time and ring in their ears, causing them to be unable to tell just what sort of karma was contained in the beautiful moments of the past that brought forth the destruction around them. When they lowered their heads, they could not tell what sort of cycles of life and death were contained in the destruction, or else. Why was it that when they closed their eyes and opened them after everything in the world had changed, even though it was still the same world? Su Ming was at the edge of a desert with a boy in his arms. When the sun rose and he walked forward, his elongated shadow could be seen behind him as if it was following him for all eternity. It was something that seemed to live in the world as a guide for snow to arrive. Su Ming walked during noon, and walked through the 4 seasons. He crossed deserts and walked past continents on his way towards the center of the world. He had no direction, but he did not want to fly. In the world around him that was once beautiful, he walked with the boy as if they were going down the path of questioning their own Tao. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then 100 years passed. During those 100 years, Su Ming retained the same appearance. The boy also stayed in his arms. The two of them did not change in their appearance or their actions, just like how the world around them did not change. Everything was the same as before. When spring arrived, all manner of life was resurrected, but in the world around them, no sign of green could be seen, no flowers were blooming, and naturally, since there were no flowers in bloom, there was no one to pick them. During summer, heat filled the world. In Su Ming's and the boy's eyes, the entire world distorted because of the heat, and they seemed to be able to see some of the people which once existed in the past. However, those figures were distorted, and since they could not be straightened, all they could see were memories. When autumn arrived, nothing changed since there was no sign of green during spring and no red during autumn. Occasionally, some color would appear in the sky, as if the heavens could not bear seeing the singular color of the land, so they made some more high up above as if trying to give hope to those remaining in the world. During winter, snow fell. It connected the sky and earth while being blown by a winter breeze. If anyone cast their gazes over, they would find that the world had turned into an indistinct blur. No distances could not be seen. The only thing that could be seen were snowflakes that could not be counted. When they fell, they seemed to be trying to touch each other, but it was destined that 2 snowflakes could never reach one another. The only thing they could touch was the wind. However, no matter what the wind's intentions were, when the snowflakes fell on the ground, they would gradually touch, but those that met then might not be those who had fallen together from the sky. Su Ming carried the boy through the snow. As he walked, He moved through midwinter and welcomed the arrival of spring, sent away summer, witnessed the coming of the red of autumn, and then returned to wind and snow. When 200 years passed, they began to see shattered bodies, corpses reduced to ash, and even bodies who still retained their original looks before their owners' deaths in the once glorious world. Most of the corpses were dried up and withered. Most of them were in the ruins of cities, but some of them were scattered here and there on the land, the mountains and rivers, and the deserts. There were countless corpses. Some of them were couples who held on to each other before their deaths. Some of them were mothers who instinctively protected their children. The outlines of their intertwined bodies could be seen when they quietly returned to dust. Su Ming and the boy buried the corpses, the cities, and the ruins. Then, during the summer of one particular year, in an afternoon with a drizzling rain, Su Ming stopped to look at an incredibly majestic city in the distance while carrying the sleeping boy. There was a headless figure sitting on the city. It was a huge city, and it was the third one built like that which Su Ming had noticed after walking through 3 continents. It was once the core of that continent and should have been known as the capital. It was just like the royal capital of ancient Zong, though in that formerly glorious world, each continent was as great as all of ancient Zong. When Su Ming looked at the figure sitting on the city, a hint of complicated emotions appeared in his eyes. He could recognize that the person who followed the second prince had the appearance of his eldest senior brother. He was not the first familiar figure Su Ming had seen in ancient Zong, but even so, the soft sigh that came from the bottom of his heart still echoed in Su Ming's mind. It lingered there, refusing to fade away even after a long time had passed. The headless figure did not move. The man sat on the city while facing Su Ming. No hint of vitality could be detected from him, but neither was there any aura of death around him. It was as if he had been fixed in that place and had turned into a statue. The gate of the city suddenly opened on their own, and groups of soldiers in black armor walked out slowly. Their footsteps were uniform, and the ground trembled from them. Each of the soldiers was shrouded in a thick aura of death, and it was so thick that it instantly threw the sky into chaos. The sunlight at noon suddenly turned black. Those soldiers were people of the land. Years after their death, they had been refined into corpse puppets and turned into black armor. Their city became a city of the dead and a world of corpse puppets. I am happy to meet an old friend in a foreign land. Come in. At the instant the city gate was thrown open, a mighty voice traveled out from the palace. It spread in every direction and landed in Su Ming's ears. The speaker was the second prince. Su Ming was silent for a while before he walked past the black-armored corpse puppets and into the city with the boy in his arms. Inside, he saw countless people. Each of them was a corpse puppet, but at first glance, it seemed like the city was prosperous. Only when Su Ming took a closer look did he see that all of it was just an illusion. He walked past the crowd and arrived outside the palace whose gate were thrown open for him. Su Ming's gaze seemed to be able to see through the halls where a man was sitting on a throne right at the center of the palace. He was dressed in an emperor's robe and wore an emperor's crown. However, his figure was hidden in the darkness and could not be seen clearly. In silence, Su Ming walked along the asphalt paths and the stairs until he walked into the center of the palace. Then, he saw the man sitting on the throne. He had the exact same face as the second prince, but he gave Su Ming a feeling of familiarity. Lei Chen, Su Ming said softly. It is I. The man in the emperor's robe smiled when he heard those words. He stood up swiftly, and when he walked out of the darkness, his appearance was different from the Lei Chen in Su Ming's memories, but his presence belonged to him and no one else. There was still a vortex in Lei Chen's right eye. That vortex was like a seal. However, right then, the vortex sealed a soul that was struggling and roaring. That soul belonged to the second prince. Su Ming did not know how Lei Chen had managed to turn the tables and seize control. However, with the wealth of experience Lei Chen had, the calculative mind which he once used to scheme against Su Xianxia for 10,000 years, and how he had managed to escape death by connecting with Su Ming's life matrix when Harmonious Morris Alba was destroyed, he was definitely not someone the miserable second prince could control. As long as a chance showed up, he could replace the second prince. Su Ming, the most gifted of all cultivators over the countless eons the seventh Harmonious Morris Alba lived through, who personally witnessed the death of Harmonious Morris Alba and who chose to possess Xianzong while standing before him. Su Ming, It has been a long time since we last met. When Lei Chen spoke, his voice still echoed in the air. It spread through the entire palace, and the world outside became even more chaotic. Because of you, I managed to escape death. Because of you, I also stepped into this illusory world. Over the years, I was suppressed by that ludicrous second prince, but I have always known that I am Lei Chen, not some second prince, because he is only a prince, while I am the emperor of immortals. Lei Chen took a step forward again. With it, he arrived right in front of Su Ming and looked him in the eye. Didn't you notice that the world we stand in currently is different from ancient Zong? Ancient Zong is fake, but this is real. Lei Chen swung his arm, and wisps of black smoke immediately filled the place. In an instant, they turned into a huge table set between him and Su Ming. There were numerous pots of wine on it, and there were also some corpse puppets around it, surrounding them while dancing and singing, even though no sound came from their throats, and their movements were stiff. The aura of death filled them, and the dim light gave the entire scene a bizarre air. When we meet a friend in foreign lands, we should treat them with a feast. Su Ming, do you dare drink this wine? Lei Chen asked while smiling softly. The prideful look on his face was the same as before. Su Ming was silent. While holding the boy, he stared at the Lei Chen before him, and sadness gradually appeared on his face. He was sad, because the great Lei Chen of harmonious Morris Alba had already lost himself in the strange new world. Or perhaps he was willing to get lost. Otherwise, with how firm Lei Chen was in his beliefs, it would have been difficult for him to get lost if he did not want it. For what reason did you do this? Su Ming sighed softly. To him, be they enemies or old friends, the connection between their life matrices had been cut when Su Ming let out his ninth Tao spirit voice. Yet no matter what, Lei Chen was the second person who possessed the power of wills, the first being Bei Qiong. Right then, when Su Ming looked at him being lost, the emotions that rose in his heart only caused him to sigh. He looked at Lei Chen, then his gaze finally landed on the area around the throne behind Lei Chen. He obtained his answer there. Su Ming, do you dare drink the wine? Lei Chen did not answer Su Ming's question. Instead, he asked the same one as before with a smile and his eyes sparkling brilliantly. Su Ming cast Lei Chen a deep look, then turned around and walked out of the palace. Lei Chen's laughter echoed behind Su Ming, sending him off. Only when Su Ming left the palace did that laughter gradually fade away. The singing and dancing continued in the palace, but grief slowly appeared on Lei Chen's face. He turned around quietly and walked to the throne. There was a rune around it, and several corpses could be seen in the dim light. On each of the corpses was a runic symbol carved into them with blood. Lei Chen stood in a daze while looking at the corpses. Gradually, the dispirited look on his face faded away, replaced by determination. I promised all of you before that I would resurrect you in this new world. It is my promise, Lei Chen murmured and sat down slowly on his throne. His figure slowly faded into darkness again, and he could not be seen clearly anymore. Only if I believe that this place is real will you not suspect that this place is fake after you are resurrected. With just me losing my way, I can bring all of you back into existence. Even if I am wrong in this regard, I will accept it. Anguish appeared on Lei Chen's face. When he looked at the mute corpse puppets dancing, he gradually heard a song, and the stiff corpse puppets before his eyes became spirited, as if they had become alive. However, while he watched them, his soft sighs echoed in the throne room, but his voice did not travel out of the palace. No one could hear him. Chapter 1458. A wine feast. In this life the sun could not be seen in the sky. It was dark above, as if it was the night when ghosts roamed. If ghosts wanted to wander on the face of the earth, they required darkness, not daylight. Under that dark sky, Su Ming approached the city gate, but then, he turned his head around and cast a glance at the palace. He could still somewhat feel Lei Chen's presence there. It spoke of a farewell to Su Ming and filled the surroundings to slowly fuse with the ancient city that had died an unknown number of years ago. Lei Chen would live in his own world and lie to himself so that he would come to believe that all of it was real. Su Ming sighed softly. He understood Lei Chen's resolve, which came from the resolve to resurrect the corpses he had placed in the rune beside the throne. Only when you believe that all of this is real will the resurrected people not think that this place is fake. Lei Chen. Su Ming did not speak. He felt as if he had come to know the other again, after they had been entangled in hate for thousands of years in harmonious Morus Alba. For the people he wants to resurrect, he chose to get lost, to immerse himself in this place. Where is my path, I wonder? In silence, Su Ming walked out of the city. When he stepped through the gates, he turned his head around the second time and looked at the headless man who was sitting above and meditating like a statue. Eldest senior brother. Su Ming stared at the man for a time. After a long while, the boy in his arms opened his eyes, and Su Ming turned around to walk into the distance. The boy lying in Su Ming's arms lifted his head and looked at the city before speaking softly. Big brother, do you know the person above the city? Su Ming did not turn his head around. He only answered quietly. He is my senior brother. The boy did not continue speaking. He just stared at the headless figure above the city. Su Ming did not interrupt his eldest senior brother's training, because his choice was different from Lei Chen's. He wanted to take another path and no longer be lost. Instead, he would shatter all veils of illusion and open his eyes to search for the real world. If he chose to willingly lose his way, then was sure that he would see the headless figure open its eyes. He would see his eldest senior brother from his memories. Su Ming was even sure that he would have a way to find all the familiar faces in the world around him. He would get to see all of them before him. However, all of those things would still be fake, and Su Ming did not want to choose that path. He wanted to walk down a different path from Lei Chen's. That road would be even more difficult and longer, which was maybe why Lei Chen did not manage to finish walking it. He chose to lose his way. While walking into the distance under the dark sky, Su Ming was surrounded by a presence of determination within the desolate atmosphere that hung in the air. He would absolutely not give up on his path. Su Ming could understand why Lei Chen did not continue to walk down this path, but he himself would definitely continue to the end of his road. In silence, Su Ming continued walking further and further away until he disappeared from the horizon. He left the area around the ancient city and went into the distance. I saw the tears at the corners of your senior brother's eyes, the boy lying on Su Ming's shoulder said softly. Su Ming's feet came to a swift halt. When he turned his head around, he stared in the direction of the city he could no longer see, then sighed softly. Time passed, and 10 years, 20 years went by. And then, 100 years were gone. Su Ming had already walked through 300 springs in the once glorious world. Year by year, day by day, he walked past the wasteland, the mountains and rivers, the deserts and the continents. When he arrived at the 6th continent, Su Ming quietly stopped before a mountain. He closed his eyes. Beneath the night sky adorned by glittering stars, he chose to meditate. His meditation lasted for 10 years. When Su Ming opened his eyes from his 10-year-long meditation, the entire world seemed to have become different. He did not care to practice his cultivation, and neither did he attempt to check just what level of cultivation he had reached. It seemed as if they were no longer important to him. What he cared about was not his level of cultivation, but his epiphany. His cultivation and his combat abilities were just mere attachments in the process of gaining his epiphany. They were not his main focus. Let's go. When Su Ming stood up, the boy tugged at his sleeves. Together, they walked into the distance. The passing of time would not change due to a person's will. Gradually, another 90 years went by them. It was the 400th year since Su Ming had come to the New World when he arrived at the 7th continent. Its soil was black, and no end to it could be seen. Yet there were no mountains, no rivers, nor plants around them. The only thing there was endless darkness, as if the continent had been cursed. From a distance, the black land with no mountains was like a black ocean. However, there were no waves on it, and it was just like the Dead Sea. Perhaps there was an old ship swimming for eternity in that ocean, and sitting on that ship was Old Man Extermination from Su Ming's memories. He's there. At the moment Su Ming stepped on the continent, he said those words softly. He did not intentionally try to search for the first prince's presence on the continent. Instead, he naturally sensed it, or rather, he detected Lin Dongdong's presence. That presence was jumbled up. It had Old Man Extermination's presence as well as that of Su Ming's childhood best friend, Su Xianyi's son, Lei Chen.
Will we meet?
The boy asked softly while tugging at Su Ming's sleeve.
He will meet us.
Su Ming lowered his head and patted the boy's hair, then walked into the distance. When their 14th winter on the 7th continent arrived, Su Ming did not stop moving while the snow fell from the sky. He just continued walking. Gradually, when the ground turned white, Su Ming saw the first mountain on that continent. It rose into the clouds while looking like a person's palm. It was the dark mountain of Su Ming's memories. He might have never existed there before, but someone had created it to stand tall in the world. Under that mountain, Su Ming saw a house, and outside it, a person was sitting. At first glance, that person appeared to be the first prince, but when Su Ming cast a second glance at him, he became Lei Chen. When Su Ming approached him, Lei Chen opened his eyes.
You're here.
A smile appeared on Lei Chen's lips. Su Ming stood where he was. After a long while, a smile appeared on his face as well, and he went to sit down beside Lei Chen.
Where are they? Su Ming asked.
After we came to this place, we were separated. I too have no idea where they went. Lei Chen swung his right arm, and a few pots of wine appeared between him and Su Ming. It's been a long time since we last drank together, right? I still remember us stealing the elders' wine while we were in Dark Mountain Tribe and drinking at the foot of the mountain, Lei Chen said softly. There was a nostalgic look in his eyes. Su Ming was quiet. A moment later, he picked up a pot of wine and placed it beside his lips, but he did not say that the pots were empty, since for Lei Chen, they were clearly full. There was wine spilling from his lips had falling on the snow. This scene caused a hint of sadness to appear on Su Ming's face, and he slowly put down his pot of wine.
Why aren't you drinking?
Do you know that for us to drink together like this again? I've waited for you for 400 years. Lei Chen looked at Su Ming with a smile, but a weary look slowly made its way onto his face. Su Ming looked at Lei Chen and asked softly, why?
I'm tired.
I'm exhausted from the bottom of my heart. It's been many years, and I'm tired, so tired. Anguish showed up on Lei Chen's face. Once he took a big swig from his pot, he let out a deep breath. This place is good. I'm very satisfied with it. You're here, the elder is here, father is here, and all our people of Dark Mountain Tribe are here. This is my world. Lei Chen smiled with great satisfaction. The only thing I regret is that it's been a long time since I drank with you. In our previous life, we were brothers. In this life, are you willing to accompany me and finish this pot of wine with me? Lei Chen asked and looked at Su Ming. His eyes were clear while waiting for Su Ming's choice. Su Ming was silent, but the boy beside him had become nervous. He tugged Su Ming's sleeves as if his choice was incredibly important to him as well. Big brother, don't do this. Hao was staring at Su Ming. When he spoke, Su Ming had already picked up his pot. While holding it, Su Ming slowly closed his eyes in silence. Time passed without any sign. Only the snow falling from the sky seemed to not bother with the coming and going of time. It continued falling to the ground. When Su Ming opened his eyes again, he saw the snow on the ground, the dark mountain, Lei Chen, and he could vaguely see the familiar tribe around the house. Not too far away from the tribe was their elder, who was staring in their direction. There was also Bei Ling, Chen Xin, and the faces of the past all staring at him. Su Ming then lowered his head. The pot of wine in his hand was no longer empty, but wine had appeared in it. However, the boy beside him was no longer around. He stared at Lei Chen, then drank the wine from his pot. A smile appeared on his face. It seemed to have taken away his fatigue and made his dispiritedness disappear when he drank with Lei Chen, his first friend, his brother, under Dark Mountain and in his tribe. From morning till night, Lei Chen and Su Ming continued drinking wine while laughter echoed in the air. They spoke of the past and the beautiful moments they had once shared together. I still remember how you looked like when you first saw Bai Ling haha. Speaking of which, if we hadn't gone to the square between the tribes, I reckon you wouldn't have run into Bai Ling. Lei Chen put down the pot of wine with a smile. I still remember that you fell in love with a girl at that time, but I've never agreed to your tastes in women. Su Ming's smile was very beautiful. It was as pure as it had been in the past, untainted. When Lei Chen heard those words, he immediately laughed as well. When he shook his head, he appeared to be filled with sentiment. At that time, I was still young. When I saw how close you were to Bai Ling, I thought that I should have someone close to me as well. For some reason, I thought she was good, but now, when I look back, I can no longer remember her name. Chapter 1459. Do you still not understand? This feast went from morning till night, then from night to morning. They finished pot after pot in big gulps. When dawn arrived but the world was still engulfed in darkness, Lei Chen became drunk. He picked up his pot, drank a mouthful from it, and when he put it down, he closed his eyes. Su Ming also put down his pot of wine and looked at the dark mountain tribe around him. He watched the lights from the lamps, but there was a barrier between him and that place. However, Su Ming knew that if he tore through that barrier, he would be able to become one with the place. Yet, he sighed softly. At the instant Su Ming began tracing the rim of the pot, he closed his eyes. Lei Chen, we were brothers in our previous life. In this life, I will finish drinking this pot of wine with you, he murmured. When he opened his eyes again, Lei Chen was still in front of him, and he seemed to be drunk. However, the tribe was nowhere to be seen. There was now a thick layer of snow on the ground. In the distance, Dark Mountain was a blurry sight. Hao had showed up beside him, holding onto his sleeve. He was staring at him nervously. When he saw the clarity in Su Ming's eyes, he breathed a sigh of relief. Su Ming stared at Lei Chen. When he lowered his head, he found that his pot was still empty. After a long while, he stood up. He did not speak, but just simply picked up Hao, and with the snow and wind blowing against his face walked into the distance. It was Lei Chen's choice. He chose the same path as Di Qian, to get lost. Di Qian wanted to resurrect the people beside him and willingly became lost so that they would believe that the place was real, while Lei Chen. It was just as he said, he was tired and exhausted. He did not want to continue down the path because he carried too much anguish on his shoulders. Su Ming's sigh echoed in the snow and wind. The howls of the wind seemed to turn into a ravine that formed a barrier, blocking him from Lei Chen, who was behind him. But it did not just block the path between the two of them. It also blocked off their two worlds. In Lei Chen's world, to satisfy his brother's desire to drink with him, Su Ming chose to temporarily lose himself. After drinking, Su Ming chose to leave, because he had his own path, which Di Qian did not manage to complete and on which Lei Chen did not choose to continue. But Su Ming would go on. As he left into the distance, the seemingly drunk Lei Chen slowly lifted his head while the snow blocked the path between the two of them. He stared at Su Ming leave into the distance, and a melancholic look appeared on his face. Our relationship as brothers in our previous life allowed us to drink in this life. Su Ming, I hope that you will be safe in your journey. When Lei Chen mumbled those words, laughter reached his ears from behind. Lei Chen, didn't you agree to drink with us today? Come on, I didn't get to win against you last time, but this time, I will definitely outdrink you. When Lei Chen turned his head around, he saw his version of Su Ming, and there was a girl standing beside him. She was Bai Ling. Lei Chen smiled. When he tried to sneak a glance at Su Ming who was retreating into the distance, he found that Su Ming had already disappeared into the wind and snow and could no longer to be found. What are you looking at? A woman asked. When Lei Chen turned his head in the direction of the voice, he saw the built woman who his past self had liked because she had a figure fit for a berserker. That woman, whose name he had forgotten, seemed to have become prettier when he looked at her at that moment. I'm not looking at anything. I just thought there was a figure over there which looked like Su Ming. Come on, let's drink. When Lei Chen said tossed words out, he smiled. Next to him was Su Ming, who was standing with Bai Ling. He was momentarily stunned, then he looked at the spot in the snow where Lei Chen had glanced over, but saw nothing. You won't be able to see him, because you are in the world that I see, not in the world that he sees. Lei Chen shook his head. While speaking, he picked his pot and took a big swig from it. The wind blew harder, more snow fell, and the world became blurry. It turned the Dark Mountain tribe as well as all the people around Lei Chen indistinct. However, it was just as he said, the world in his eyes. The boy next to Su Ming, who was already very far away in the distance, turned his head around at that moment. At the very end of what he could see in the wind and snow, he could vaguely see Lei Chen's desolate figure sitting alone. Time gradually passed with each step Su Ming took. Another century went by, and Su Ming left the Black Continent and arrived at the 8th continent. He walked through the endless sea of a desert. During the 700th year, he remembered a promise while he was in an ancient city at the center of the 8th continent. It was a promise between the 3 9th-level Tao gods in ancient Zong, a promise that they would fight in the royal capital after one of them had entered isolated training for 1,000 years.
I can't see it anymore,
Su Ming mumbled softly. He walked past the city, and in the west of the land, he saw a tower. There was a person meditating in it. The man's face was unfamiliar, and he looked like a corpse that would no longer rot. The moment Su Ming looked over, the corpse's eyes flew open to reveal a brilliant sparkle. I've calculated for 600 years, and I've finally managed to figure out that you would walk past this place on this day at this date. Third Prince, you are the reason why I fell to this state. It's because of you that I got sealed in this world, and I have waited for you for 100 years in this place.
You will die now,
the corpse said slowly. Its voice held indescribable resentment. When the world around them let out a bang, the color of the sky changed. The ground rose, and a large amount of fog filled the land. The fog twisted in the air, then rose to the sky. A huge mark made of fog formed above the figure. It was not a mark though, but a huge seal that covered a huge area. The runic symbol shone, and when its surface became uneven, a brilliant, dark light spread out from it to form a screen of light that instantly fell on the land as if it wanted to cover the sky. The corpse shouted then, and its voice spread through the entire continent in thunderous roars.
Lin Dong Dong.
He was the great Tao paragon of one Tao sect, a powerful warrior who had inherited the Tao of Kismet. Just as Lei Chen had said, in the formerly glorious world, the wills within the first prince had spread out to become Lei Chen, Lin Dong Dong, and Old Man Extermination. The mysterious aspects of the world they were in right then had separated them. Lei Chen chose to get lost, Su Ming had yet to meet Old Man Extermination, and Lin Dong Dong had clearly chosen to kill Su Ming. I will kill you and rob you of your Kismet, and then, I might be able to take a step further in my level of cultivation and become a 9th-level Tao god. If I'm able to do that, I will have a way to leave this accursed place. Murderous intent burned in Lin Dong Dong's eyes. When he lifted his right hand, he pointed at Su Ming. The sky immediately roared. The huge fog seal started rotating swiftly and appeared above Su Ming to push down on him. It stirred up loud booms in the process. With it, the ground under Su Ming's feet began to tremble violently. Cracks instantly spread through it as if it was about to sink. The signs of its imminent destruction were clear. Su Ming's expression remained the same. He had not paid any attention to what level of cultivation he had reached during the 700 years he wandered through the land. But at that moment, when he looked at the fog seal descend from the sky, he did not sense much pressure from it. It was as if he could make it disappear with a swing of his hand. Su Ming did not sense much of a threat from Lin Dong Dong either. Once he focused his attention on the situation at hand, he saw all that was going on. Lin Dong Dong had been weakened, to the point that he was at the verge of being reduced from a great Tao paragon to a Tao paragon. It almost seemed like his existence was unwelcome in the world. And while he had weakened, Su Ming had become stronger. In silence, he brought his right hand up and pointed at the sky. With it, the huge fog seal that was descending let out an astonishing roar and stopped 1,000 feet above Su Ming as if there was a barrier that could not be seen beneath it. All manner of reality and falsehoods, all glory and destruction are just words spoken by the people after us, and they only exist in the passage of time.
Do you understand?
Su Ming asked softly. He swung his right arm, and immediately, the huge fog seal started trembling. It gradually became indistinct. In just a few breaths, it disappeared like the wind. Su Ming's composure caused Lin Dong Dong's expression to change while he was on the tower. His pupils shrank, and he swiftly focused his attention on Su Ming, but he only discovered that he could not tell just what level of cultivation Su Ming possessed.
That's impossible.
With my level of cultivation, it's impossible for me to be unable to tell just how high anyone's level of cultivation is. When Lin Dongdong's pupils shrank, he quickly stood up from the tower. He took a step in Su Ming's direction and left behind an afterimage in his wake. Once he went forward, he appeared right in front of Su Ming and seized the air with his right hand. With it, the sky immediately roared. Its color changed, and a crimson sun appeared in the sky. The ground rumbled with Su Ming at the center, and cracks below him connected in the picture of a moon. The sun and moon will shine together, forming the brightest light in the world. Lin Dongdong's voice boomed in the air like thunder and covered the entire land. Immediately, the crimson sun in the sky exuded an indescribable wave of hot air. Then, as if it was plunging from the sky, it charged towards Su Ming with loud bangs. At the same time, the mark of the moon under Su Ming's feet started rotating as well. The whole ground seemed to be moving. Waves of silver light instantly rose into the air and enveloped Su Ming within them. Gather together the threads of Kismet in the world, and with the power of all lives, your Kismet shall leave you and descend on me. Lin Dongdong's eyes were bloodshot. At the instant he spoke his last word, the sun in the sky descended with a bang. The silver light on the ground turned into countless silver threads of law which charged at Su Ming to kill him. Each of those silver threads contained all of Lin Dongdong's Kismet. He turned his Kismet into a will containing his killing intent, and it was strong enough to even destroy the world. His entire fortune was gathered in the threads, and it was as if one Dao Sex Dao of Kismet had descended. You will die now. Lin Dongdong was incredibly confident in his attack. Even though he had been weakened considerably, it was his greatest killing move, and he was certain that Su Ming would definitely die, unless he possessed the power of a great Dao paragon. While surrounded by the silver threads and the setting sun, Su Ming sighed softly. Do you still not understand? Chapter 1460. Some people. While his sigh was still echoing in the air, Su Ming lifted his right hand. Just like when he dissipated the fog seal, he flicked his wrist, and without a single sound, the silver threads around him instantly stopped moving. Then, they became blurry, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared one by one. It was as if they had never existed to begin with. When they returned to nothingness, even the sun plunging down from the sky gradually became transparent. It slowly took on the color of the sky, and then disappeared from above Su Ming. This sight immediately caused Lin Dongdong's pupils to shrink further. He took a few steps back without any hesitation, but disbelief on his face. As H fixed his stare at Su Ming, his breathing quickened slightly. You! Lin Dongdong opened his mouth, but he did not know what to say. The shock he felt at that moment was indescribable. He had never thought that there would be someone who could so easily disperse his killing move right before him. It was as if his divine ability truly did not exist. This scene overturned his beliefs, causing the great Dao paragon Lin Dongdong to be unable to accept what he saw. It's been 700 years since we last met, and your cultivation base has far surpassed my expectations, but my desire to kill you will never diminish. Lin Dongdong sucked in a deep breath. His eyes sparkled, and raging killing intent appeared in them. He took a swift step forward and brought his right hand up. A black short sword immediately appeared in his hand. There were many runic symbols covering it, and with a swing, that short sword multiplied to 10. With another flick, the 10 short swords turned to 100, then to 1,000. When they covered the sky and earth, their numbers were too great to count. The world seemed to belong to the swords at that moment, and countless sword glints charged at Su Ming. It's useless. Time itself stands between us. You still don't understand? Su Ming shook his head. There was clarity in his eyes, and as he sighed, the sword glints pierced through him. But as if Su Ming's body was just an illusion, those sword glints only phased through him and did not deal an ounce of damage to him. This world is fake. Ancient Zong is just the battleground between me and Xianxia for my possession. This is an illusion. I am not lost in it, and you are just a speck of dust in it. Su Ming shook his head. With each step forward he took, Lin Dongdong took a step back with an incredibly dark face. After 5 steps, he made to speak, but Su Ming did so first. His voice traveled into the air, and it made his expression change again, because Su Ming's words had just given voice to the doubts Lin Dongdong was just about to say. You cannot see through my level of cultivation, but it isn't because my level of cultivation is unfathomable. It's because we are separated by time, and it is a wall you cannot see through clearly. When Su Ming said those words in a flat voice, he moved to stand in front of Li Dongdong. I refuse to believe it. Lin Dongdong's expression instantly became ferocious. He lifted his right hand and struck his chest. With it, his face instantly became purplish red, and a large amount of black smoke gushed out of his 7 orifices. That black smoke instantly gathered into a huge fierce face in midair. When it roared at Su Ming, the weather changed as if the laws in the world had changed at that instant. When the huge face opened its mouth wide and sucked in a sharp breath in Su Ming's direction, the power of the world in the area charged over with loud booms. Only Su Ming remained with his long hair unmoving. His robes did not even flutter. He just stood there calmly and watched Lin Dongdong. The moment Lin Dongdong saw that, the huge face into which he had turned filled with shock. His divine ability could absorb all the aura in the world, but it had been unable to affect Su Ming in the slightest. However, he still did not believe in Su Ming's words. Although, it was perhaps more accurate to say that he did not dare nor want to believe them. At that moment, his reason to kill Su Ming changed into wanting to prove that he was wrong and all that he said was just nonsense. The huge face closed its eyes, and Lin Dongdong instantly returned to his body beneath him. His power had increased by a large margin. Killing intent shone in his eyes, and he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already behind Su Ming. His fist went hurling towards him, but no sound could be heard. The only thing that happened was his fist phasing through Su Ming's body. Impossible. Lin Dongdong's eyes went bloodshot. He appeared around Su Ming continuously and threw punches at him non-stop. It lasted for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Only then did Lin Dongdong take a few steps back with a pale face. He stared at Su Ming with a stunned expression, and despair appeared in his eyes. He had not despaired when he was trapped in the formerly glorious world, but instead persisted in his desire to kill Su Ming and rob him of his kismet, because he had his pride. He was a great Dao paragon. Yet then, when Su Ming had finally arrived, Lin Dongdong's persistence turned into despair. It would have been fine if he could not kill Su Ming, but it was simply impossible for him to even touch Su Ming's body. The man's words also echoed in Lin Dongdong's ears, making him stumble back, and then, his despair turned into grief and misery. Impossible. He could only murmur that word to tell himself that none of it was real. But the test that lasted for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn told him that what Su Ming said was the answer, and there was no other explanation to it. Lin Dongdong lifted swiftly his head and stared at Su Ming. When his voice echoed in the air, it was like thunder. This must be a divine ability you learned in this accursed world. Right now, the one I see before me is not your real self, but a shadow of yours. Su Ming turned around and looked at Lin Dongdong. This is the answer, and also the reason why I can't kill you. It's not because time stands between us, and it's because I'm fake, but because the version of you in front of me is just a shadow. I understand now. You are a cultivator from 7 Moons Sect, and 7 Moons Sect practices the 7 Lives art. That art of yours must have reached a certain level, which is why you could create an indestructible shadow, but while this shadow of yours cannot be killed, it has trouble killing even a mortal. The more Lin Dongdong spoke, the more convinced he became. Once he finished speaking, there was no longer despair in his eyes. Instead, a cold and fierce killing intent appeared in his eyes again. Third Prince, you bastard. Your words just now have indeed confused me for a moment, but once I find your real body, I will kill you. Lin Dongdong stared at Su Ming, then moved back slowly and turned on his heel. He swung his arm, intending to leave. Su Ming looked at Lin Dongdong, then lifted his right hand with a calm expression before he pointed at the sky. It immediately trembled with a bang, and stars appeared in it. The number of the stars could not be counted clearly. All those observing them could only see that they were arranged together into a huge whip. I have finally understood why the space whip always shows just an illusory power that is similar to a projection instead of its real form when it is shown before me. When Su Ming said those words softly, he swung his right arm, and the stars in the sky shone with a brilliant starlight. It instantly replaced the sky as well as all the light in the world, making it blindingly bright. The blinding light was the same as darkness. When it reached an extreme degree of brightness, it would appear as black when a person looked at it. When the light disappeared, Su Ming had already vanished with Hao Hao. The only person remaining in the place was the stunned Lin Dong Dong. At that moment, his body slowly shattered, and only his nascent divinity was left floating in the place while staring around it in a daze. Su Ming did not kill Lin Dong Dong, because at that moment, living for that man would be much more painful than dying. After a long while, Lin Dong Dong's nascent divinity suddenly laughed. His voice echoed in the air, and there was great confidence in it. "Third Prince, you bastard. What an art, but don't think that you can use it to deceive my eyes. Even if that shadow of yours has some power, as long as I can find your real body, I will definitely kill you. Third Prince, you'd best hide properly, because on the day I find you, I will destroy both your body and soul. I will definitely find your real body." Lin Dong Dong's face was brimming with confidence. He even felt as if he had gained an epiphany, which had not happened since he had become a great Tao paragon. He let out a cold snort, and with his confidence as well as his epiphany, his nascent divinity left into the distance. With the remainder of his life, he would use all his power to search for Su Ming's real body, and it would last for an unknown number of years. But he was bound to be unable to find Su Ming's real body. He was just like a fish determined to find its own tears in the sea. But he was sure of himself and would persist in his actions with madness because he believed in them. Perhaps due to this belief, he would one day come to find the Su Ming his heart believed to be Su Ming, but that Su Ming may not be the real Su Ming. Lei Chen seeks his beliefs, Lei Chen seeks for peace, and Lin Dong Dong seeks madness. What do I seek? While murmuring that question to himself, Su Ming walked into the distance with the boy in his arms. Every single one of them pursued what they possessed in the world they believed to be real. They still had dreams, and even if they had already been fulfilled, they were still on their way to fulfill them. This sort of pursuit was a form of strength, since even if it was impossible to fulfill the dream, it would give them strength to deceive and even numb themselves. And since pursuing something in itself was a path for someone to take, the road was bound to be filled with hardships, trials, and miseries. Some people would stop on that path, wanting to rest, but once they rested, they might find that they had already reached the end of their road, just like the butterfly named Harmonious Morus alba. Some would give up on moving forward and draw a mark that signified the end of their path. They would live in that mark, and only they themselves would know whether they were happy or not. Yet some people would continue walking down that path, and even if they were faced with trials and hardships, burdened by desolation and misery, they would soldier on.